What is it about music that can transform your ordinary life into something extraordinary? What is it about music that can touch us so deeply and set in motion the wheel of our emotions? Whether we celebrate each other, nature, or the divine, our desire to express ourselves through music is ancient and a cultural universal. In this program, we will explore music from all over the world and speak with guests from musical, spiritual, scientific, and other realms in a quest to share and understand how music affects us. I'm your host, BRAUN, and this is Soulscapes. Justice is the music that holds a society together. It is the underlying score that gives structure to the many voices playing at once, ensuring no instrument drowns out another and no voice is left unheard. Justice is like a conductor with a finely trained ear, shaping a living composition where fairness is the rhythm, dignity the melody, and the shared human world the symphony being performed. A fearless lawyer, a formidable judge, a best-selling author, a brilliant TV show host, and now a masterful creator and host of an internationally acclaimed celebrity podcast reaching over 10 million weekly viewers. A force to be reckoned with on every level. My guest today is the Honorable Harvey Brownstone, who has just launched his memoir, Without Prejudice, My Life as a Gay Judge. Making every second of every minute count in the busy days of his life, I'm very happy he has made the time to be my guest this morning. Harvey Brownstone, welcome to Soulscapes.
Audie, it is such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for the honor of chatting with you this morning.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I've been wanting to do this for such a long time. So let's start. You know, I often say to some of my musical guests, I say music and you say, but I want to do things a little differently today. If I say justice, what do you say? Any words or thoughts that come to your mind?
3 words: fairness, objectivity, and integrity.
Those are high and wonderful moral standards. So let's continue along those lines. If we then think of justice as fair treatment and fair consequences, I'm personally drawn to your life story, which from your childhood seems to have been anything but just. Tell us about your early life and some of the challenges you faced.
Well, I think that I can tell you that my home life as a child growing up was good. I was an only child and my parents loved me and I felt loved. But the 2 major challenges in my life were, number 1, bullying. I don't know why, I don't understand how, but from about the age of 8 or 9,
wow,
the other kids at school just picked up that I was different. Kids have a way of zeroing in on anything about another kid that's different. Could be physical. In my case, I just must have been flamboyant. They called me a queer and a sissy and a faggot from that age. I didn't know what it meant. I certainly knew nothing about sexuality or anything, but I was badly bullied. And then I made the big mistake in grade 4. I don't know why I did this, Audie, but I was the only Jew in the school and it was Christmas time and we were singing Christmas carols. And what possessed me to put my hand up, and I told the grade 4 teacher, well, I'm Jewish and we don't celebrate Christmas. We celebrate Hanukkah. What a mistake, because then I was the dirty Jew. And I was beaten up pretty much every day from grade 4 to the end of grade 8. So that was one major challenge, the bullying. And then the next challenge, which you know about, when I came out when I was 19, my parents kicked me out and I then was thrown into crisis. Those were really the only 2 challenges I think I had.
Did those early experiences, and I'm sure there were others that compounded those experiences, lead you to wanting to advocate not only on your behalf, but on behalf of those who were marginalized or, as we say, disenfranchised in some way?
I always felt my whole life, I think I still do, that I was on the outside looking in. I've always identified and empathized with the underdog. And couldn't have known, couldn't have imagined in my wildest dreams that I'd ever be a judge. I never thought I'd even get a job as a lawyer, but did end up utilizing the pain and the hurt and the anger that I experienced in my youth on the bench. And I think it gave me a very different approach to dealing with litigants because I really felt that I had experienced some of what they had. So I hope that it made me a better judge than I would have been otherwise.
Well, those three marvelous words that you mentioned at the beginning that conjured up the word justice for you, I guess compassion is one that needs to be invoked at the same time, right?
Yes, you're absolutely right. Compassion, it's a quality that you're not taught in law school. And I have to tell you, I was a judge 26 years. I never heard the word compassion ever used in a judge's education program or at a judge's conference. It was always about the law. It was always about applying principles of law to fact situations. But I never saw the job that way because of compassion. I saw myself more, not as a legal scholar, but as a problem solver. I wanted to roll up my sleeves and see, why are these people in this situation and how can we use the law to make their lives better and solve the problem? So it was a different approach. And I think it was based on compassion. At least in my mind, I tried to convey that.
So as you mentioned a little while ago, you were 19 years old when you came out as gay and your parents, I'm going to use the word, cut you off. Just describe the scenario to us and how the heck did you survive?
Well, you know, when you look back, and I've asked myself 1,000 times, why did I tell them? Didn't I know what my parents' reaction would be? But the truth is, I didn't. I kind of thought they knew because I'd never dated any girls in high school. I figured if all those kids in the schoolyard had me pegged, how could my own parents not know? So I didn't expect an explosion. But my mother, who was a Holocaust survivor and who was a very unfiltered and a kind of a steamroller of a person, exploded. I would say to you, Audie, it was an explosion of volcanic proportions. She just couldn't believe it. And in those days, it was 1976, they just, the attitudes were so different. And they did cut me off. What happened was, I was going to school in Kingston, Queen's University, and I'd come home to Hamilton for the weekend to tell them I was gay. And I got thrown out. I get back to school, and about a week later, and I'd had no contact with my parents. A week later, I get called into the office of the Dean of Residence at Queen's, and he says, "Is there some kind of problem with your parents?" And my throat just fell. And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because your parents' check, the post-dated checks that your parents have given, their check for residence fees has come back stop payment."
Unbelievable.
Not NSF. It's not insufficient funds. They've stopped payment. Well, then I burst into tears and I told him what had happened. And he said, "Well, this is unacceptable. I'm going to call them." And I said, "You don't know my mother. You don't understand." He said, "Let me call your mother." Well, she exploded on the phone and she said, "We have not cut him off. It's tough love. Until he comes to his senses and he realizes he can't be a homosexual, we want nothing more to do with him." And that's that. So how did I survive? Well, this wonderful dean, who, by the way, is portrayed in the movie version of my book by Ernest Hardin Jr., who's a wonderful actor. Anyway, he got me a scholarship. He said, "If you can maintain straight A's, the school will pay for your tuition and books." And then he got me welfare, $125 a month. And that covered my residence. And all I had to do then was get a job to pay for food and other living expenses. So I started cleaning people's houses because I figured I could clean. And then I thought, well, I should get a job in fast food places because maybe I could steal a French fry here and there. So I did that. And how did I survive? Well, sometimes I dated guys that were older than me that I knew would have money so they could feed me. I went to weddings and stole the rice. I learned very quickly where to find free food. I would go to restaurants around 10 o'clock at night and see if there's any food they were going to throw out, like salad or dinner rolls. And I got known by a few places that felt sorry for me and would give me food. And that's what I had to do. I would sometimes I went to weddings, and I'm kidding about stealing the rice, but I would show up. I would show up. You want to know one of my big tricks? Since you're my friend, I'll tell you.
Sure.
If you go to any hotel in any city, there's usually a conference going on of some kind. If you show up at about 10:30 in the morning, there's always a coffee break. And outside in the hall of whatever meeting room they're in, you will find a table with muffins, Danish, coffee. I would show up and I'd have my fill every single morning at 10:30. There was always one. And I'd wear a shirt and tie so it looked like I belonged, and I'd fill up. So I found ways of getting free food.
Conference crasher. So when you just described that beautiful story of your very compassionate dean, and we have to not forget what year it was anyway, right? We often say and talk about, angels, the idea of being lofty outside of the earth, something that is not tangible, but we have angels, good people walking among us. And that brings me to my next question. So clearly you were and always have been a person full of inner strength and great resilience. Where did you find your inner reserves? And has spirit or spirituality, any of that, did it play a role then, even without you realizing it? Does it play a role today? Does it somehow infuse in the subtlest of ways your life's journey?
I believe that you can draw good people to you if you are a person with a pure heart. You've done it, and I think it happened to me too. I seem to have drawn these people. I strongly believe in destiny, and I am a spiritual person. I have always felt guardian angels guiding me. I have learned to listen to that inner voice in my head, which in my opinion is the voice of your own soul speaking to you. If you can peel away the layers of everybody else's expectations and of your own anxieties and listen to that inner voice inside you talking to you, some people call it intuition or instincts. I believe that voice that tells you what's right for you, where you should go and what decisions you should make and who in your life you should gravitate to, those are voices of guardian angels. Those are inspirations coming to you through the spiritual realm. And because I quickly learned to do that, I've always followed my instincts and I've always felt the help. So even in my darkest moments, I really did believe that it would all work out okay. I couldn't have predicted all the things you said in your introduction. I'm not saying that, but I knew I was going to be okay. I was going to make it somehow, in some way, I was going to survive.
I like your imagery of peeling away the layers, but there's often a lot of work involved for the individuals doing that, right? And that's the challenge, is that for some people the layers are just too many, that they can't access that, which you call that the goodness, the guiding light. And I do believe, just like you, that we each one of us has that. And challenging as it may be, it's worth peeling back those layers, right? Because then you come to your true self. So you put yourself through university with conference muffins and so forth, and then you went to law school. I'm curious, who were your mentors, your sources of inspiration during these difficult but also exciting times for you?
Well, the first one was Mr. Reynolds. I mentioned that the dean of residence at the law school, and he used to say to me, he had this favorite quote. I can't remember who the author was, but he would say to me, Harvey, you're not measured by the heights that you have climbed, but by the depths from which you have climbed. And he would always keep reminding me that look at where you're starting from and just manifest where it is you're going to go, because you've really started from zero. And I think he felt for me because Queens was an Ivy League school. I didn't have one other classmate who ever had to work. I don't think any of them had student loans. I mean, it was a really very affluent environment. And I don't think my other classmates understood, that I couldn't go out and party with them. And I didn't have money for like cigarettes or beer or something. Like I was trying to make sure if I bought a bag of chips, that was a luxury. So Mr. Reynolds was a real mentor. And then I got really, really lucky in the summer, right before third year of law. I got this summer job at the family court in downtown Toronto. And I was assigned as a clerk to Judge Rosalie Abella.
Oh.
She was just a family court judge. Of course, we all know her now. She went to the Supreme Court of Canada. But in those days, she was a family court judge and I was her clerk. And she took a shine to me. And she used to ask me my advice after listening to a case. And we would discuss how she should decide. And she often took my advice. And one day she said to me, you're kind of like a human question mark. You never talk about your life, your family, like where you come from, nothing. Tell me about yourself. And I told her the truth. She said, your parents kicked you out because you're gay. And I said, yeah. I said, but you got to understand, my mother's a Holocaust survivor, and for her, it was terrible. And she blew up at me. She said, wait a minute, you're pushing buttons. You are pushing buttons here because I'm the child of Holocaust survivors. My parents lost everything. They lost a child before I was born. They were in the concentration camps. Don't you use that as an excuse for what your mother's done. I'm phoning her. Well,
oh, dear.
I almost died because I said, you don't know my mother. She said, you don't know my mother. You don't know what my mother's like. Well, later on, I did meet her mother, and I know what she meant. Her mother was a force of nature personified. Anyway, I won't bore you with what happened. I'll just tell you, and it's all in the book, but I did cringe as my mother gave it to her, but good. And when Rosie hung up the phone, she said to me, okay, Harvey, you win. You win. And then she said, now you listen to me, and you listen good. You don't need her. You don't need anyone. You're going to be a really good lawyer. And I think if you work hard and you believe in yourself, I think you're going to be a judge one day. Well, I thought she was insane. I thought, this woman, I'm being told by my professors that I will never get a job because I'm out of the closet. No law firm's going to hire an openly gay lawyer. And this woman's talking about me becoming a judge. I thought it was very kind, but it was over the top. But she turned out to be a mentor, a real guardian angel. She made me believe in myself. And much later on, when I did become a judge, and then I decided to write a book, which was unheard of in those days, to write a book to the public, telling them what really goes on in family court. She's the one that read that book first and said, Harvey, publish it. I'll stand behind you. Go ahead and do it. I'll help you. I'll help you if you have any flack. That's what you call a guardian angel.
Did you have any hopes while she was talking to your mother? Did you have any thoughts that your mother might sort of cave and say, okay, you're right. I'll let me talk to Harvey? Or was it clear to you that it was futile?
Oh, it was absolutely clear that my mother, in fact, turned on her and said, oh, really? Oh, really? You shouldn't do that to your son. How many children do you have? And she said, I have 2 young kids. She said, well, I hope it happens to you. Let's see how you handle it. It's easy for other people to talk. What if it's your own child? No, it was bad, real bad.
Well, I'm glad that chapter has come and gone, but it took a while. I'm sure we're going to talk about this again. So music and law are both ancient traditions. And what I find so fascinating is that music as a form of protest, in terms of protest songs, goes as far back as the year 2000 BCE, when people used to sing or chant to criticize, even back then, injustice, their rulers, or social conditions. So, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the earliest laws to address injustice also date back to that same time, but laws to protect the marginalized. And that's interesting. Laws to protect or to be the voice on behalf of only really came into being in the early to mid 20th century. Why did it take so long?
Oh, Adi, that's easy. Because men ruled the world. It wasn't until women started mobilizing for equality. That's when the world began to change. We owe it all to women.
Hear, hear. That's incredible. So let's get back to some injustice, which then led to some justice. In 2003, when same-sex marriage was legalized in Canada, tell us about your role both at home and abroad, because it was a thoroughly significant one.
Well, I'm very really grateful that I got to live through that era. You know, when I became a judge in 1995, the thought of gay people getting married was unheard of. And every once in a while, I would be asked to officiate at a wedding for friends. And it felt so surreal, Audie, to be able to confer the status of marriage on these people because I was a judge, but I wasn't entitled to it myself. It just felt so surreal. And then during the litigation, I began to realize that I was kind of the voice and the face of the gay world within the judiciary because there just weren't any other out judges who were doing anything or saying anything about being gay. Like, I would bring my partner to judges' conferences. I wanted these old farts to see that our relationships are just the same as theirs. And I wanted them to have some context. And I would invite them to our home. And I tried to sensitize them a bit because it just didn't feel like any of these people had any exposure to the gay world. I used to say to my colleagues, like, doesn't your wife have a hairdresser? I mean, do you have no gay people in your life? Anyway, flash forward when the decision was made in 2003 that gay marriage would be legalized in Ontario, I got a call from an organizer of one of the gay groups, organizations in Toronto. And he said, you know, we're getting all these calls now from people all over the world. They want to come to Toronto and get married because we have no residency requirement to get married in Canada. And can we give them, like, we don't know where to send them. Who's going to officiate? And I said, well, I'll do it. This is how naive I was. They said, well, how are they going to reach you? And I said, well, here's my email address. Now, this is 2003. Emails were not, it was just starting. Well, in the next week, we received 8,000 emails and it crashed to the server at the court.
I'm sure.
8,000 emails. Thousands of couples wanted me to officiate their marriage. Toronto became like the number one travel destination for gay couples all over the world. Mm-hmm. So I started doing it. I did 5 weddings a day until the US finally legalized gay marriage. I was doing 5 weddings a day before court, morning recess, lunch, afternoon recess, and after court. It was quite a time. And one of the couples I married was Edie Windsor and Thea, her wife. They came from New York. This was the couple whose marriage triggered the United States Supreme Court litigation that ultimately overturned the Defense of Marriage Act. So I remember. Very, very proud that I was the officiant at the wedding that launched gay marriage in the United States. And I hope Canadians can feel some sense of pride that it was because we had same-sex marriage here that they were able to get married and then fight the fight down there.
There was a documentary made called A Very Long Engagement, right? About those 2 women.
Yes, you know, it was a very, very poignant and heart-wrenching situation because Thea, this couple had been together for 42 years. And a very high level couple they were. Edie was the first female executive at IBM, and Thea was one of the top psychotherapists in New York City. Her clientele was jaw-dropping. Mm-hmm. And they had been together 42 years. And then Thea, who had multiple sclerosis, was given a fatal diagnosis. She had just 3 months to live. And her dying wish was to come to Canada and get married. So for most people, when they get married, it's the beginning of a chapter in their life. But for these 2, it really was a culmination and a celebration of the life they'd already had. And they showed up with a film crew. And I thought, oh my God, you know, if I'd known this, I might have had a little makeup applied. But they told me they were doing a documentary and would I mind? And I said, no, go right ahead. Well, the movie's beautiful, as you mentioned.
Yes.
I'm very honored to have that scene in the movie where I do the wedding. And then on the DVD, they interviewed me. So there's a bonus feature on the DVD, and I got to talk about what that wedding meant to me. It was such a beautiful, beautiful ceremony. And they really exemplified what a good marriage should be because they had already proven the longevity and the loyalty and the support. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget that wedding.
And, you know, I'll never forget my own wedding at which you presided and officiated. And I have to tell you, just in listening to what you're saying and your struggles with your family, while we may, my wife and I, not have exactly experienced the same thing because everyone's life is different, we chose to get married on our 20th anniversary. And we had resisted for such a long time, but I can tell you that it was actually that celebration, and you're presiding over it, was a milestone in our life because it brought together a few family and friends. For some reason, I think that that act, our ceremony, brought an air of levity and more acceptance into our life and the ripple effects into the others. It was like magic.
Well, let me tell you that your wedding was such a beautiful, beautiful event. The setting outside in that beautiful garden, the wonderful speech your mother gave, the love that was emanating for you by all of us and between you and Linda, it was magic, real magic. And it was music and everything about it was magnificent. And I will tell you that what you've told me, I've heard this many times, that people feel a difference, that it's not that they didn't feel connected before. It's that there's a sense of legitimacy and validation knowing that you are registered with the government. You are not legally roommates anymore. You are spouses. It does make a change.
Your life, Harvey, has been really a series of firsts. First openly gay judge, first sitting judge to write a best-selling book, Tug of War, first sitting judge to host a primetime TV talk show, Family Matters, and now the host of the Harvey Brownstone interviews. So looking back, did you ever imagine that this would be your trajectory in life?
Honestly, yes.
Ah.
And I'll tell you why. I touched on it before, that I always knew I would make it, I would survive. But the reason I was able to imagine it is because rejection is a powerful motivator. I knew when my parents threw me out that I had to prove them wrong, that I was going to have to do whatever it took to make them not be ashamed of me and love me and accept me. I knew, because I was openly gay, that I had to work 3 times harder than everybody else and be 3 times better than everybody else to be considered equal. Women and visible minorities have had to do that for centuries. But my ambition and drive and focus on success showed me early on that I could conquer almost anything I've set my mind to. So could I have predicted the specifics that you mentioned? No, but I knew I was going to do whatever it took to make it, to be somebody. Why? Because I desperately wanted my parents to not be ashamed of me and to love me.
These words are so powerful, and I hope that when people listen to it, it rings true for them. As you say, rejection is a powerful tool, but for some people who are not, I don't know, who haven't maybe peeled enough of those layers back to see the shining goodness in their personhood, for some, rejection has the opposite effect. So I am just so thrilled to hear your story, which meant that you were continuously trying to lead by example.
I'll tell you this. The late 70s and 80s were not kind to lesbians and gay men. And I saw many other young gay and lesbian people who did allow rejection from their families to destroy them. They self-medicated with alcohol and drugs. I had several people I knew that committed suicide. And I chose not to let that happen to me. I was not going to be a victim. I was going to take that pain, that hurt, that anger, that sense of betrayal, and harness it and channel it into success. And that's really why I wrote my book. I believe strongly that when you are faced with something like that, that kind of rejection, you must turn it into something that will be positive. So yes, it was a powerful motivator.
Mm-hmm. Well, because you mentioned the book, Here We Are Now, you have just now authored a memoir, Without Prejudice, My Life as a Gay Judge. Why did you write it?
Well, I wanted young gays and lesbians to know what it was like in the olden days. It just seems to me that there's no community memory about our world. And I believe that trailblazers and pioneers, or even just survivors like me, should record their stories so that history isn't lost. I did live through a time that was really hard. And I wanted people to know how I got there. For what? I was appointed in 1995. So I'm always referred to as the first openly gay judge in Canada. But does anybody ever know what did it take to get there? What did I have to do? And sure, I obviously learned to play the game. You don't get appointed to the judiciary if you can't play the game well. But you can play the game well and lose sight of the fact that the game itself is broken. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was time to write a book where I made sure people knew that. I also felt, and this goes to something you just said, Audie, I knew that my story would resonate with a lot of people. Maybe they weren't rejected by their parents because they were gay, but I've known lots of people who felt they didn't get parental acceptance for all kinds of reasons. Choice of partner, choice of career, choice of lifestyle. There are a lot of people who feel that their parents didn't really accept them or love them. And there was a lot of life lessons I shared. For example, what you and I talked about, listening to your instincts, being still long enough to peel away those layers that we talked about, trusting your instincts, learning how to find out who in your circle really cares about you and who doesn't. How do you deal with professional jealousy and sabotage at work, which certainly happened to me, because all of those achievements you mentioned, the price you pay when you do something like that, when you think outside the box and you become an inventor and an innovator, is professional jealousy. And so all of those life lessons I thought would make for a good book that people might find hopefully inspiring.
And then, we're going to the next step now, because this book has been turned into a major motion picture, which you just shared with me earlier is in post-production. How do you feel about opening? I mean, you already did in your book, but when you're doing a movie, it goes really wide, right? So how do you feel about opening your life up to such a large audience?
I'm very happy about it. I consider it a miracle. When you consider that I wrote the book April 2025, it took a month. I just put myself in a zone and I just took myself back there and wrote it and spilled it all out. It was almost like I was taking dictation from my spiritual guides. But at the end of April last year, I wrote the book. In May, which would be a year ago from now, I sent the manuscript to a director who had been on my show 3 times and who I liked, and I like his movies, and I think he liked me, and I just wanted him to tell me, what do you think of this book? Do you think there's a movie in there? And if so, who do you think I should send it to? Well, 2 days later, he phoned me and said, Harvey, I couldn't put that book down. Yes, there's a movie in there, and I'm making it. Oh, I couldn't believe it. Well, that was in May. In October, we were filming. Now, neither you nor I are steeped in the world of Hollywood, but I will tell you that I have learned that it is unheard of for a screenplay to be written, for the financing to be put together, to the casting to be done, the locations, from May to October. It's unheard of. And somehow, by some miracle of this fabulous director, Shane Stanley, it all happened. I was on set. So when you ask me, how does it feel? Well, watching my own life unfold before my eyes with these actors who did a brilliant job really was quite surreal. It was very cathartic. It was redemptive. Yeah. I got to help them. There were 3 actors that played Harvey. There's the little boy who gets bullied. There's the Harvey that gets kicked out and goes through law school and becomes a lawyer. He's played by David Mazouz, who is the star of a TV show called Gotham. He plays the young Batman, Bruce Wayne. David Mazouz does a brilliant job. And then David Arquette plays Harvey the judge. And all 3 actors, of course, relied on me to help them. And so I was very much a part of the creative process. I had approval over the screenplay. So yes, my life is being opened up to a large audience, but I had a lot of input into how it's opened up and to make sure that it's true to the book. And I do believe, Audie, I've seen the movie. It is quite something. I think you can assume that if Hollywood jumped all over this story, it's because it's unique. I've seen every gay movie ever made. There's never been a movie like this. Not about a judge who takes on the justice system and then reinvents himself as a talk show host. This movie is going to have a huge impact. There have been massive test screenings in Los Angeles. And the response to the movie from the test audiences has been staggering. 100% are predicting a blockbuster. This movie is going to really cause quite an avalanche. And I know that sounds like a lot of hyperbole, but just wait.
I will be there watching, and maybe we should take cover for all the avalanches, but be glad for them too. Approximately when will it be released in worldwide, I guess?
The movie will premiere in the fall. It's going to do a number of film festivals around the world. I don't have details yet, but in early 2027, it will be on a major streaming platform, and that will be global.
And, you know, the interesting thing is that while certain liberations have happened in our world and in our country, and I'm always very happy to be living in Canada, as I'm sure are you, we are seeing regressions in terms of people, marginalized people's lives being shattered all over the world. So I think where and when this movie comes out, it will be quite catalytic in many, many ways. So,
yes, I think that what you've said is very, very important. When I asked the director why there was such a rush to put this thing together, he told me that he actually had another movie he was about to start on, and he put it on the shelf in order to do this. And it was because of timing. He and his production company believe that timing is everything when it comes to social justice storytelling. And that because of what's going on, particularly in the United States, where the LGBTQ community feels quite threatened, it's important that this story come out now. And that's why there was such a rush to make it happen. So yes, there is regression. Yeah. This is an important story. And although it is a gay movie, in my mind, the director, who is not gay, and none of the actors are, he was adamant that this not be seen as a gay movie, that this is a story that goes way beyond that in terms of issues with parent-child, issues about rejection, issues about professional jealousy, and of course, taking on the justice system, as you'll see in the film.
Right. Well, and the thing is, I love the title, Without Prejudice. You know, the curious thing with prejudice is that it's this little monster. When you think you've quieted it down and there's been enough education for people to be enlightened, just when you think that's been accomplished, it raises its ugly little head again. And right now we do find ourselves in a time where there are many prejudices. So I'm eager to see what's going to happen as a result of this movie. I know that you're a lover of the performing arts. Have music, art, and film always played a role in your life?
Oh, yes. When I was being bullied as a kid, I escaped into the world of TV and movies. My biggest escape was I Love Lucy, because it was on at 4:30 in the afternoon. And if I could just get home in one piece, because getting into the school and getting out of the school after school was the hardest, you know, just to get in the building and then get home without getting beaten up.
Like in one piece.
In one piece. And if I could just get there, I'd get to see I Love Lucy. And I made Lucille Ball my best friend. Oh. And then movies like A Wizard of Oz and A Star is Born, or any movie where you could escape and be somebody else, really, really soothed me. And then music, I would say, when Carole King's album Tapestry came out, boy, that album, I must have worn it out. I'm sure I just wore that out on my record player, because that song, You've Got a Friend, I didn't have any friends. I had no friends growing up at school. And I didn't have many friends in university because I was always working or studying. I mean, when you have to get straight A's, if there's no plan B, there's no option. I don't have time to party. So I didn't have friends. And her song, You Got a Friend, really, really helped me a lot, you know. And then there was Judy Garland, her Carnegie Hall album, which my dad had bought and we would play. I could hear the pain in that woman's voice. I could hear it in her tremolo. I just felt a connection to the vibrato. And I felt, boy, she's channeled all that pain into this artistry. Maybe I could channel all mine maybe I'm being bullied for a reason. And in the book, I go into some detail about why I think I was bullied and what it taught me and why I am grateful that I was.
The interesting thing about Judy Garland, it's brilliant how you draw attention to her tremolo, her vibrato. It's interesting because she had one of the strongest voices, and yet her vibrato, the swinging of her voice, the undulations are filled with vulnerability, right? And moments where you think this person's going to crack, but no. Do you remember how old you were when you first discovered Judy Garland?
My dad had that album, and I think I was about 10. And I just couldn't get over that vibrato. I could hear in there that this woman had suffered. And maybe it was, we all know that she was addicted to pills, and she drank a lot. Maybe that was the reason. But and you're the musical expert, so you would understand the mechanics of it. I just heard pain.
If you had to choose 3 or 4 pieces of music that you have gone to for upliftment, or that you would put on if you're feeling you need that moment of upliftment and joy, what would Harvey Brownstone's mini playlist look like?
Well, this is easy. The very first song on that playlist was a song that in my deepest, darkest moments of despair have kept me going. And it's from 1978, Gloria Gaynor, I Will Survive.
Oh,
number 1. Number 2, in the early 80s, a Broadway show came out called La Cage aux Folles. And one of the big theme songs was I Am What I Am.
yes.
That was really the first gay anthem. And that song validated my need to be visible, to not be ashamed of who I was, to be out of the closet and be proud of it in an age when very few gay people were out of the closet. And I'm going to say, Miss Addie Braun, if you will permit me, there is an album of yours called The Rules of the Game.
Mm.
And the entire album is a master class, but I play that album a lot because the song's beautiful. If We Had Never Met and Guanabana Bay are my favorites. Now my new favorite is the Cole Porter album, which there's just every single second of that is sublime. They would be on my playlist. And if I may be so bold, the theme song from our movie, which is a brand new song written for the movie called Stay Beautiful. It was written by Steve Dorff. Steve Dorff has written 40 top 10 hits. Like he wrote Kenny Rogers Through the Years. He wrote George Strait, I Cross My Heart. He wrote Whitney Houston, Saving All My Love for You. The man is a giant. And he fell in love with the screenplay and decided to give us a song. And it's called Stay Beautiful. And it's been recorded by Sam Bailey, a British singer who won the X Factor a few years ago in Britain. She flew over to Nashville and recorded it. That song, Stay Beautiful, sends a very powerful message. The lyrics were written for this movie. So that's what would be on my mini playlist.
Well, I'm chuffed and deeply honored and probably blushing, although our listeners can't see this, that you included me on your mini list. I'm very, very happy. Your life is such an example of how inner strength and resilience can help us to overcome adversity and injustice. Are there any final words for today of inspiration or upliftment that you can offer us? Anything that comes to mind, or something you'd like to read? Or
Well, there is a poem that really touches me, because I feel sometimes that we're all so wrapped up in achieving things and the urgency of life that we kind of forget to look at the big picture. And this poem, it's called The Dash by Linda Ellis, and it always brings me back to what really matters in life. So if I may, I'll read you this brief poem. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of birth and spoke the following date with tears. But he said what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. For that dash represents all the time that they spent alive on earth. And now only those who loved them know what that little dash is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged. If we could just slow down enough to consider what's true and real, and always try to understand the way other people feel, and be less quick to anger and show appreciation more, and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering the special dash might only last a little while. So when your eulogy is being read with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you spent your dash?
It's brilliant. It's witty. It's full of warmth and full of truth. That little dash, right? That holds every millisecond of every moment of every now. We have come to the end of our time together, but I can foresee perhaps in the future another time when we can sit down and chat because God knows we have a lot to talk about. So thank you so much. It has been very uplifting and completely inspirational for me to speak with you.
The Honorable Harvey Brownstone, thank you so much for being my guest on Soulscapes.
Audie, it was an honor and a privilege. I loved every moment of our time together, and I cherish every second that we are together.
From north to south and east to west, music inhabits every corner of our world and beyond. I hope you've enjoyed my conversation with the Honorable Harvey Brownstone. I'm Audie Braun, and this is Soulscapes.